The Bible is a long and confusing book, so how are we supposed to know where to start? Well, sometimes it can help to have a teacher. Let's chat. Hey, Will.
Hey Matt, how you doing?
Doing good. How are you?
Good.
You and I have had a lot of discussions about reading our Bibles.
Yeah.
It's, like I said, a long and confusing book. But sometimes you stumble upon something and it kind of just blows your mind a little bit.
Yeah, that happens quite a bit.
But I think probably most of the time I just am confused, if I'm being honest.
Right.
You read something and there's so much history and culture and context to things that it's like, how am I supposed to know what's going on?
Right.
And you actually recommended this really cool resource to me called BEMA. And we've used it a fair bit. We've referenced it a lot in sermons and things like that. But why don't you kind of just tell me a little bit, and for the folks at home who don't know what it is, what is BEMA?
Yeah, BEMA is a podcast and Bible study tool.
Mm.
And what it basically does is it helps you read the Bible from maybe a perspective that you haven't considered before.
Mm-hmm.
This is a book that was written a long time ago to, in different languages to
Mm-hmm.
people that were living lives that were very much different, although there are some similarities, but they were very different culturally than we are. And so I think the first place that you need to start is realizing that you may not know everything there is to know about this context when you approach the scriptures.
Mm-hmm. So, I mean, there's a couple different perspectives on what the Bible is that are maybe unhelpful, right? You open up to page 1 of the Bible. It seems to be a scientific account of how the world was created.
Right.
And so a lot of people might say, like, well, this is how God created the earth, and then this is how humanity screwed it up, and then this is God's plan for how he's going to fix everything. Another perspective that I've heard is that Bible is an acronym, basic instructions before leaving Earth.
Yeah, I've heard that.
Which is kind of like this escapism mentality of like, when we die, we want to make sure we go to the good place and not the bad place.
Right.
And so, how has this Bible study tool kind of shifted your perspective on what the Bible is?
Well, I think this is definitely a study tool for people that are familiar with the scriptures. I wouldn't suggest this necessarily for someone who was brand new to the scriptures.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'd be a little bit you can get not see the forest through the trees that way, and so because there's a lot of information. It's a thick book.
Mm-hmm.
But for me, I think the things that have changed is kind of my approach to scripture.
Yeah.
Working, being passionate about ministry, being passionate about what God has called me to, and getting the opportunity to actually work in a church. I work with a lot of really smart people. And so I didn't have that opportunity to get to go to seminary. And so simply because it's in my nature, like I like to keep up. I like to make sure that I am, equipped to do this. And so it kind of felt that I was just trying to keeping up with the Joneses. I'm just trying to catch up. So a lot of times I'd approach the Bible to just get information. Like, what does it say about this? And what does it say about that? And so when you take a step back and you realize that maybe there's more to this book than just a what do you call that? Like an index for me to look up, a solution to an answer, or to see, just to see what it said about this particular instance. I think that the interesting thing is when you look at the scriptures as a whole, it's not a bunch of individual stories, even though it was written over this collection over a vast period of time. There is a consistent narrative that goes through Genesis all the way through Revelations. The problem is that the way that I was approaching that, I knew that there were 66 books, and there's a lot of information, and so I would just start it, and it kind of felt like, okay, this is something that I need to do. Now, that's not a bad thing. Every Christian should read their Bible. I think every Christian should read their Bible. The problem is that I was doing it, I think, a few ways the wrong way. I was doing it to get information. I was doing it in isolation. And when you're left alone with you and your thoughts, I think when you don't have other people to just to hear what they're thinking,
Hmm.
or to bounce your ideas off them, then it just bounces in your skull, and you can start making connections that really aren't there.
Hmm.
Because as human beings, we're meaning machines. We want to understand
Hmm.
what these go through, and so going through BEMA and understanding the meta narrative of Scripture and what the story is telling us
Hmm.
helps me see that these aren't just a bunch of cards that are shuffled together.
Hmm.
This was done with purpose.
Hmm.
This was done with an amazing amount of intelligence and thought. It's almost as if the guys that wrote the Bible had some help.
Hmm. So I mean, it's a podcast, it's a resource, but you mentioned not doing this in isolation, right?
Yeah, I think what's been great is we just started a group here just a few weeks ago. I mean, we're only in double, I mean, I think we just finished episode 14
Okay.
of the podcast. And so we listen to a podcast, and throughout the week, they're given the opportunity to listen to it. And then we
Hmm.
just get together, and there's no curriculum.
Hmm.
We just share our thoughts. And what's crazy is there are things that come up from them, what they have heard, and with the friends that they've shared it with.
Hmm.
They've come up with ideas about, hey, like, why did this happen?
Hmm.
Well, did you ever think of this? They've come up with things that I've never even thought of before.
Hmm.
But I think that the main thing is to realize is that I'm not an expert in the Bible. I've read the Bible for decades.
Hmm.
And so have the guys that lead this podcast. But these guys are not rabbis.
Hmm.
These guys are not they have not been ordained
Hmm.
rabbis that have gone through rabbinic school. These are guys that have spent a lot of time with teachers, looking through the Bible, both the Old Testament and the New Testament, but doing it through a Jewish context,
Hmm.
looking at it through a Jewish lens. And so, if you think about it, when you think about Jesus, he wasn't a guy who was just walking around saying random speeches. He
Hmm.
was actually teaching in a very Jewish, a very rabbinic style.
Hmm.
And so the more that we can understand the way for example, the examples they use, or the ways that they would talk,
Hmm.
you're able to understand, I think, a little bit more of the story,
Hmm.
because almost everything that comes out of Jesus's mouth
Hmm.
is something from the Old Testament.
Hmm.
And so when he's speaking to people, he's speaking mainly to a predominantly Jewish audience
Hmm.
that is very, very, very familiar with the scriptures.
Hmm.
So when he says one thing,
Hmm.
they'll get the context and understand what he's talking about, and
Hmm.
understand that he's talking about a lot more than just those few words, because
Hmm.
they have the history, they have the stories, and they have that connections. And so what BEMA does for me is it helps me understand
Hmm.
how the stories from the New Testament are. The New Testament is just a continuation of the stories that we have in the Old
Hmm.
Testament, and how they refer back to one another. So it's just great.
That's cool because I mean, you kind of read some of the stuff that Jesus says, and you're like, well, that sounds Bible-y, right?
Right.
And I guess you can miss a lot of the context that's going on there. I know that you're just a few months into this study group, but how's that been going?
It's been going really, really good. I jumped ahead a little bit with everyone before I started the group, because I wanted to make sure, like I had taken some time with the information,
Hmm.
um, and I couldn't wait for the group to get started, because a big part of BEMA is community.
Mm.
And I think actually the best part of BEMA hasn't necessarily been sharing the thoughts. The best part is that I've gotten to know some guys. I've gotten to know some people that I've not hung out with usually.
Hmm.
I just hadn't spent a lot of time with. And what's awesome is on Sundays,
Hmm.
these guys I've never seen talk before. They've said
Hmm.
hi to each other,
Hmm.
but now they talk.
Hmm.
And so I think it's just it's an awesome time where we can spend time together around something that we're all passionate about, which
Hmm.
is trying to understand what this big book called the Bible,
Hmm.
what is it saying to us today?
Yeah.
And so when you do that in isolation, it's a lot different than when you're doing it with a group, and I get to know the people that I'm serving and worshiping along with. So this has been actually a really good. That's been actually a huge side benefit.
That's
Has been the
awesome.
community.
That's cool. So if someone's interested in joining the BEMA group, are you accepting new people into
Yeah,
this?
yeah. So we think anyone can join in. Obviously, all the material does build off one another, but it just really depends upon where you are in the journey.
Mm.
I think right now there are like 10 seasons, and
Wow.
they're not long. Some are anywhere between 15 minutes. They could be 45 minutes. I speed it up a little bit
Hmm.
when I'm listening in the car. But the great thing is that you can listen to this at your own speed,
Hmm.
and to have me only listen to one episode a week is an act of self-control,
Hmm.
because I can listen to two or three or four in a day.
Hmm.
So you can either jump in on the conversation. There is no pre-requirements. It's just that you just have to be interested to learn more about this particular lens that we're looking through,
Hmm.
and be willing to share your thoughts.
That's cool.
Yeah.
So is this like an in-person thing? Is it Zoom?
We try to make it both. So
Mm-hmm.
we have one person that joins us on Zoom because it's just more convenient for him.
Mm-hmm.
But everybody else comes, and they come in and they chime in person. So we're all in one room together. We've got one or two guys up on the screen. But we really want to make this. We want to make this should not be a chore for people.
Mm.
This should not be a chore. This is actually the way that the material has, that at least that I've how I've received it. It has been a joy.
Mm-hmm.
And so I'm just learning things that I didn't know were there,
Mm-hmm.
simply because I don't have the context.
Mm.
And so I'm listening to guys that got, they may not be pros, but they've got a lot, they've spent decades studying this, and they're sharing what they've learned over time, that they think, uh, that they're sharing the most important parts, and the most important parts is what they think. It's
Mm-hmm.
actually the tools that they're giving you
Mm.
when you're not listening to the podcast,
Mm-hmm.
to find things out. For example,
Mm-hmm.
I remember when we're all studying, we were all doing some Bible studies together, and you were really into the poetry,
Mm-hmm.
and so poetry isn't really my thing. But what happened is that when I learned how biblical poetry works,
Mm-hmm.
I remember how I used this to find a poem in the book of James.
Mm.
And then I found several more in the book of James. And the way these poems work is that the center idea
Mm-hmm.
gives you the main thrust of what the author's trying to say.
Yeah.
If I didn't know about these literary devices,
Mm-hmm.
repetition,
Mm-hmm.
things of that nature, I
Yeah.
would have never picked up on that. So it's not that there's any secrets that you're uncovering.
Mm-hmm.
There's no secret code. There's no
Mm-hmm.
like hidden messages. That's not it. It's to just understand these stories and the scriptures a little bit more deeply, because you have the cultural and historical context.
Well, cool. Thanks for sitting down and sharing a little bit more about that. I'll go ahead and leave some info in the description of the video if people are interested in tuning in.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think it's just a great context to consider, because, if you think about it, Jesus was a Jewish rabbi.
Mm-hmm.
The first disciples were all Jewish.
Mm-hmm.
And they were living very much, and the scriptures come from a very, very Jewish context.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not that this is a new way to read the Bible. It's just a different perspective,
Mm.
and it's helped me see things that I didn't know were there.